Welcome, thank you for joining us. Today I'm at the headquarters in London of the Federation of Master Builders with Brian Berry, Chief Executive of the FMB. Brian, we've known each other for a long time.
We have, Liz,
I know.
many years. It's
Yeah.
great that you're here at our London headquarters.
Well, I'm particularly pleased to have this opportunity to talk to you about the licensing of builders, an issue that we've certainly discussed probably well over a decade, probably longer.
Probably a bit longer.
Yes.
Yes, it's been.
But it's so timely, and it is so much in the sort of public eye, and a lot of political interest in this at the moment. So I thought we'd take the opportunity, if possible, just to explore and unpack a bit more about what this really means. So could you get us started and tell us about the licensing of builders, your campaign that you've been running on this?
Thanks, Liz. And you're right, it's very topical at the moment, but it has taken a long time to get to this point. It goes back probably over 10 years. We were doing quite a lot of media work about cowboy builders, going on local radio stations, advising consumers about what you could do to protect yourselves, which we continue to do. But it was in 2018 that we actually thought, right, we've got to step this up because there's a massive problem with consumers being ripped off, but also our members saying actually it's really an unfair playing field where we've got unregulated, incompetent builders coming into our industry, setting up business. And the fact that anyone can call themselves a builder doesn't seem right, and it's not right. And that's why in 2018 we set up our campaign, License to Build. We published a report from Pi Tate to underpin our call for a licensing authority, and we got industry support or industry interest because we brought the professional bodies in, consumer organisations, to talk about what licensing might mean. And we had Liz Peace, who was the former chief exec of the British Property Federation, to head it up. So there was quite a good momentum going on in 2018, and that carried on up until the pandemic, and then we just had to put it back on the back burner while we waited to see what was happening. But it is in more recent years that the campaign has taken off again, partly because as a response to the tragedy of Grenfell, the government, the Building Safety Act of 2022, and discussions about competence. What does competence mean in the building industry? And that's difficult for a general builder to demonstrate. Yeah,
well, we are going to definitely talk about this and unpack some of those issues. But can we go back to the point about the sort of consumer detriment, actually? What is the problem that we are actually trying to solve? We talk about cowboy builders, but I'm not sure they're actually even builders, frankly. I think they're just criminals. But how big is the problem, and what is the evidence for consumer detriment in this space?
Yeah, it's a massive problem, and we carried out some research earlier this year, and which revealed that over 5 years, £14.3 billion, 14.3 billion, has been paid by consumers to rogue traders, which is staggering. So people spending tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 plus, on work that had to be rectified in some way, leaving people in a very dangerous situation with poor consumer redress. And when we're talking about the financial side, it's the emotional side for a lot of homeowners who feel absolutely bereft, and their mental health has suffered as a result. And in some cases, I remember this was before the pandemic, there was a young child in a pushchair, and the retaining wall, which hadn't been built. Do you remember this?
I remember that story so well, yes.
And that small child was killed.
Yes.
I think it was called James. And that's why we have to license the building industry. When people talk about the cost and regulation, it is the personal costs, and people have lost their lives as a result of poor workmanship, which at its worst extreme does lead to loss of life. But for many people, it has affected their mental health and their financial pockets, actually.
I'm struck by that number because 14 billion if I'm right, the total sort of RMI market, repair, maintenance, improvement market, is something like 26, 28 billion, as I understood it. So that's 50% of what consumers are spending on home improvement, repairs, maintenance, going to what you would consider rogue traders. How do you know actually they are rogue traders? It's the first question I would have. But also 50% seems extraordinarily large.
It's very high. We did a survey with the Homeowners Alliance. 37% of those who responded said that they had used an unqualified or incompetent builder. We know from our own survey that 1/3 of homeowners are put off having work done because they don't know who to go to. How do you find a builder, a qualified builder? We'd like to think that they would come to the Federation of Master Builders. But a lot of people will just take a recommendation, which can be good, but it may not be. It is a gamble. And they use on-site platforms where you don't know if the reviews are trustworthy. That's why we have got a situation where so many consumers don't know who to go to. It is random, and you've got a lot of people coming into our industry trying their luck.
No, it's true. When as you know, I chaired Trustmark for some years. This is probably over 10 years ago now. One of the things that we did, I don't think it's live anymore, but we set up a website called findanyOldBuilder.com. And when you clicked on it, it basically came up with a page which just said, really? You know, really? Are you that desperate to find anyone? Actually, let me signpost you to the right places to go. But you're right. I mean, I know from our experience at Trustmark, the vast majority of people rely on personal recommendations and word of mouth. And that also resulted in some of our worst cases, where people had asked if, do you know somebody who can do a piece of work for us? Oh, yeah, Jim will sort you out. And of course, Jim's not qualified. Trading outside, I mean, he may be perfectly competent in one area, but then trading outside his area of competence. And it all ends up as a disaster and a very nasty consumer dispute, a lot of distress, business goes bust, consumer left out of pocket and with a home that you can't live in.
This is an ongoing problem. And the other problem is directors closing down the business, Phoenix companies. Setting themselves up, avoiding any punishment for what they've done. And they carry on doing this.
It does strike me, I'm going to stick with the consumer detriment bit for a second, but it does strike me that you're right, there's a sort of a sense in the general public that this is a shark-infested waters. This is a dangerous place to be. But I don't get any sense that the true scale of the problem is actually quantified and well understood. I mean, in the numbers that you've shared with me, I thought I was quite well informed about this topic, and I'm really shocked by those numbers.
Exactly. I was shocked at 14.3 billion. I think a lot of people are quite embarrassed when they have had poor workmanship done, so they're not talking about it, which is why we've reached out to those who have been affected to get their stories. And it's a whole range of stories, but often they're very emotionally distressed about what's happened. Some people don't like talking about it because it's quite triggering about what's happened. And
they're worried about devaluing their property as well, particularly if they had work done before they wanted to sell up or,
And people just want to draw a line under it and move on because otherwise you're in the loop. So the problem is wide scale. So we've, on our website, you can find out the extent of the problem in your constituency. So you can type, so I live in Lewisham, so I could type in Lewisham, I would find out whether or not more people are ripped off in terms of financial loss than other parts of the country.
Oh, I got to go and do that.
Have a look, because it's no surprise in the major towns and cities you get, it's much more prevalent that you could be ripped off compared to in the countryside. But this has been really interesting because politicians, we've been encouraging them to have a look at their own constituencies to reveal the extent of the problem. And that does show, actually, it's widespread.
I remember we did some research at Trustmark where We also found pockets of significant problems, obviously in areas where there were second homes.
Oh, yes.
So that actually some rural communities, very popular for second home ownership, where people actually are usually spending a fair amount of money on home improvement work.
That doesn't surprise me, because you won't know the local tradespeople. You may not have very strong connections. You're not going to be in the property. You're away from it. So yes, that doesn't surprise me.
So I'd like to turn to understanding more then about how the licensing scheme is going to work. Talk us through what does a licensing scheme actually look like?
Yeah, good question, Liz, because people ask us, what does it mean? And so when we commissioned Pi Tate to do a report in 2018, they looked at a possible model that might work. And the report said about having an independent licensing authority, so separate from the industry. I think that should be attached to a government department to give it credibility. But the licensing authority would have a range of scheme operators. The Federation Master Builders would be one of them, but it could be open to other bodies to move in, provided they meet the criteria. So that the licensing authority set the standards, the scheme operator implements those standards, not dissimilar from the Trustmark model.
It is a Trustmark model, isn't it?
It's a Trustmark model. Because in that way, if you put a licensing authority at the top, you're not disrupting what's happening at the moment. There are lots of good bodies doing fantastic work. Provided they meet the criteria, they can carry on operating. Because there would be a degree of nervousness amongst various organisations about licensing. There would be a cost, so companies would need to pay an annual charge, but you're getting rid of the criminals that come into our industry. It also means that there would be a defined set of competence standards, so consumers could be assured. There would be a proper consumer redress, so if the scheme operator failed to solve the issue, it could go up to the licensing authority, who would act as an ombudsman, really, to resolve those cases. And because it's independent, it's got the freedom then to actually act independently away from industry.
So in what way does it differ from the Trustmark model?
Well, Trustmark is essentially a voluntary model. The scheme operators, members who join the FMB do so on a voluntary basis. The fundamental difference is this would be a mandatory system. Because we would create a level playing field. It would actually remove those elements of the industry which shouldn't be there.
So talk it through from my perspective. Am I being licensed as an individual or as my business?
So we've said actually as a business, because we feel this would be the quickest and easiest way to actually introduce licensing. At some point that could move on to having a carded workforce to demonstrate their individual competence, because it is in the individuals that actually you're going to ensure that actually there's a high quality of work being done. But we'll have to do this step by step. So I think the easiest way would be to have the company licensed and make sure that the owner of the company is responsible for the workforce.
So if I'm a small building company, maybe half a dozen of us, we're getting licensed at a company level through the FMB or through another scheme operator. What do I have to do? What hoops do I have to jump through in order to achieve this license?
So we would recommend similar entry criteria as we have at the Federation Master Builders. So the key thing would be an on-site inspection. Let's go out and see the quality of the work. We are the only organisation that will check the work on site. So we can check the quality of work, but then we'd be looking at their insurance record, making sure they've got no county court judgments, making sure they've got their insurance in place, all the basics. We'd check any background checks as well on social media in case there have been some negative stories there. So there would be a series of criteria, but the most important thing would be that check on an independent inspection of the work.
How long does it typically take then from start to finish to go through that process? For example, if I was an FMB builder, how long does that take?
Yeah, it tends to vary, but we'd like to do it in 4 to 6 weeks. Depends on when we can get the inspection done.
Okay, and how much?
Oh, what for the
for me as a company, how much
to join
do
the
it?
licensing authority? Yeah. Well, our report was done 8 years ago, so it was much cheaper there. We did recognise that sole traders. I think in the report it talks about £150. It would be higher than that. We're talking in the hundreds for a small a sole trader, and obviously larger companies would pay more. It's got to be on a sliding scale.
So Brian, we have had voluntary schemes for a long time. It's been a sector where I guess self-regulation has been the predominant theme. I remember, Department of Trade and Industry, as was, did lots of research around this, over 20 years ago, and looked at this issue of sort of a mandatory licensing scheme, and actually said no, we will stick with industry self-regulation in effect. What's the problem? That sort of why is that not working?
Yes, I remember this. It goes back to the previous Labour government under Tony Blair. And the fact is, here we are 25 years on or more, and we still have the problem of people being ripped off by rogue traders. So the voluntary approach, which is very confusing, it isn't working. That's the problem. Trustmark, which was meant to be about improving quality, which it does, but it's a voluntary organisation in the sense that companies choose to join companies such as Federation of Master Builders, and we know that the bad ones aren't going to join. They can operate outside of this. And there's a lot of confusion about competent person schemes, which are self-regulating. Consumers, we know, are very confused about what building control does, trading standards, Trustmark, and then you put in the mixed Federation of Master Builders. I've been in workshops and they're just very confused. Or they believe that actually builders are already licensed. They can't believe what do you mean, Brian? Anyone can be a builder. They feel that there is already some form of registration or control, and that's why they're so bewildered when they think, gosh, there's very little we can do now to get our money back or actually to address the issue about poor workmanship.
So is your feeling that the sort of the self-regulatory schemes were fine? It's the lack of consumer awareness and understanding that is the issue? Or is there something fundamental about the models that we've got at the moment?
I think the models are good for those companies who join up and they can demonstrate their credibility. But too many consumers are using builders who don't belong to any scheme. And the fact that actually that they don't know the differences between these various schemes like Trustmark or even building control, trading standards, means that it would need to be a massive information campaign going out to consumers. We do our bit, and I know every organisation does, but it's bewildering, I think, if you don't know the construction industry or your consumer rights about actually who do you go to for information. I mean, who would you go to? Clearly, we like to think they come to the Federation of Master Builders, but people don't. Tends to be on a personal recommendation, which often leads to problems.
Yes. I remember mapping out this market many years ago, and I saw it on a sort of continuum. So at one end was the findannualbuilder.com websites and the little directories that get put through my door at home, sort of anyone who advertised, and you sort of keep that leaflet on your kitchen table just in case. I mean, and then there were sort of industry schemes, and then there were groups like Chartered Institute of Trading Standards had schemes going. So some local authorities ran their own trading schemes.
Yeah, that's true.
We had Which come in and run their trusted trader type scheme. And then there were government departments that also effectively sponsored their own schemes. And that's an interesting area I'd like to unpack a bit, because Trustmark was born from a master license that came then from the Department for Business. But MHCLG would obviously be looking at competent person schemes, and we had Department of Energy and Net Zero sort of with its own ideas of schemes to try and protect people who were being funded for energy efficiency type work. And I've seen a recent proposals from DESNZ to create another scheme again,
yes,
in the light of the failures of ECO
yes,
and some of the problems there. But it was even different departments. And in fact, I think I'm right in saying that the gas safe scheme actually came out of the Department for Work and Pensions or something. It was another scheme that had another government sponsor. So even the government departments were not actually agreeing on these schemes.
exactly. And this is still carrying on now. You mentioned the consultation that's just come out about consumer protection for retrofit work.
Yes.
This came on the back, as you know, about the problems with the external wall insulation, the failures there, and Trustmark was under a lot of criticism about not being able to address this issue. But various government departments not really aligned or linking up on these protection rights. And so this is a major problem, and the consumer protection, another model to try to address this problem. I'd love to see this more closely aligned with the consultation on the future of the professions and trades, because they're talking about now the Single Construction Regulator. Government needs to pull all this together. So the consumer protection for retrofit, which is only dealing with government-funded retrofit work, which is a real disappointment. I think it should be across the board. This needs to be aligned with the work of the Single Construction Regulator. So we need to get government to pull it all together. And that's why an independent licensing authority attached to government that cuts across all departments would really help.
I think that's, that joined upness at that end of the continuum would be absolutely critical.
Yeah.
We can't have different departments running their own schemes.
And different departments with slightly different views.
Yes. And different schemes with different costs and different models and different consumer messaging. So actually it doesn't solve the problem at all.
It doesn't. And
it just replicates the...
For decades now we've been talking about this. There have been various solutions, but they've been in silos.
Yes.
We need to root and branch reform. And it was interesting that the Consumer Minister at the time, Miatta van Buller, talked about fundamental change, but she moved. This is what happened, as you know, in government. And so I think it's been watered down to some extent. But I was really excited when the minister said, actually, root and branch reform, we need to crack this. I think she understood the problem and was determined at that time to actually think we need to solve this once and for all. It's a mammoth task, really. But in a way, the principle of it's quite simple.
If there was a single national regulator in this way, a licensing authority, as you describe it, what happens to all the other schemes? The local authority, trader schemes, the witch scheme, all the other schemes?
So I think this was identified in the research report, which recognised there are a lot of schemes already happening, doing some fantastic work. If you've got a single licensing authority, they would set the criteria. It would be up to all the other schemes to meet those criteria. So it's up to them. They need to adapt and change. There will be fallout. And that's not such a bad thing, because we want to simplify delivery, because it is very confusing at the moment. But everyone has that opportunity to step up. Otherwise, I think there will be a lot of opposition from various scheme operators saying, that's not right, we're doing a fantastic job. So let's agree the criteria, give everyone the opportunity to step up, and then let's see where we go from there.
And we've talked about the level of consumer confusion in the market. So, and I would say this, wouldn't I, as a communications person, but the level of promotion and PR and support and comms support around a scheme of this nature would need to be huge, wouldn't it?
Yeah. The consumers would need to know what this licensing authority is doing. They would need to know about what a licensed builder, what does it mean? So we would have to attach quite a lot of work on communication, public information, websites, all the social media channels. But that would be the responsibility of all the scheme operators underneath to explain what's happening. We'd like the government to actually say, right, we are tackling this problem for consumers and our industry, because although it's enhancing consumer protection, which is absolutely right, it also means we're going to have a more productive, highly efficient building industry.
Okay.
Because we're going to have yes, because if you've got licensed companies, they are going to have to demonstrate their competence. Right. At the moment, anyone can call themselves a builder. Mm-hmm. They don't have to have any qualifications, mm-hmm. which is quite scary, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You and I this afternoon could go out in our van and talk about Mayo and Berry builders, and we could try a bit of painting.
Oh, that sounds great idea.
And just see how we get on, and take it from there. Doesn't seem quite right, does it?
No.
So I think it will drive up standards in the building industry, which is obviously very important against the background of the Building Safety Act, which came in, which is still poorly understood amongst SMEs who think actually, no, that's to do with larger contractors. Not realising that the implications of the Act affect every single person in the building industry. Yes. And I'd like to think in time, with a licensing authority, there would be a requirement for builders to have ongoing training and development because...
CPD.
Yeah, CPD.
Right.
Why not?
Okay, so let's stick with this idea of competence then.
Yeah. What
does competence look like?
That's a very good question because we haven't got a clear answer of what competence means for a general builder. We've got particular competence criteria for individual trades, but when you talk about a general builder, there isn't one. It's open. Yeah. So we need to develop and agree as an organisational competence standard for the general builder, and that needs to be recognised. And from there we can then move on. But there's an awful lot of work going on already in terms of looking at competence across the trades, but we need to pull all this together.
And who would decide if I'm a competent builder or not?
Yes, so you would think actually the licensing authority would need to be able to set these standards about what is required.
Okay. And does that mean qualifications?
I think it's a mix because a lot of really good builders don't necessarily have the qualifications, but they can demonstrate competence. And that's why the inspection is so important. Okay. If a builder can demonstrate and show you the quality of their work, that should be accepted. But we may have to actually think about some form of assessment to demonstrate that. We don't want to put people off coming into our industry by saying you have to meet or pass an exam. This is an industry where people use their hands, and not everyone is academic or able to write very good answers, but they can actually do fantastic work. So we've got to find a way here to improve that, to demonstrate that competence.
So, if it's a licensing model at a company level, but it's an individual competence assessment, not a company competence.
Well, that's why I'm saying that to begin with, it should be organisational for the company to make sure that the company is meeting the requirements. Okay. That's how we operate at the Federation of Master Builders.
Okay, yes.
So it's a company, not the individual. No. So I think that is the first step. Yeah. Let's work on that model because that would be a huge improvement. At some point in the future, we can go to individuals, but I think that's some time off at the moment.
And there's a huge number of sole traders as well. So would they be brought into this licensing scheme as well?
Yes, they would be. We want the cut-off point. If they are a handyman or handy person, they wouldn't be included. No. So it's whether or not they're undergoing structural change to the envelope of the building.
Right. Okay.
That would be the difference, I think, actually.
That makes sense.
Because otherwise, you can imagine the Daily Mail would be saying, wow, if you can't hang a picture now without getting a licensed installer. So we need to avoid that.
No, that wouldn't pass the Daily Mail test.
No, conscious of that.
Okay. So we're going to need effectively some inspectors going out.
Yes.
But that would be done by the scheme operator.
That would be done by the scheme operators. So we have our own inspection team at the F&B. Other scheme operators would have the same.
Do you think, have you worked out the impact of this in terms of businesses that would just say, do you know what, I'm just going to hang up my boots now? We know the age demographic of the industry.
We do. We know that one third of the building industry is going to retire in the next 10 to 15 years.
Well, there you go. So if I've got to jump through a load of hoops to show that I'm competent, I've been doing this for 35 years, mate. You know, never had a complaint. I don't belong to a trade association, never needed to, got my work through word of mouth, always done a really good job, known locally, well respected. You're now telling me in order to carry on trading, I need to jump through these hoops and get licensed, and someone's got to come and check out my business and tell me if I'm competent. No, sorry, mate, I'm off. I'm going to retire. Have you looked at that scenario?
Very much aware of that. We haven't got the stats, but there will be some who will just say, that's it, I'm going. They'll use that as a reason to leave the industry because they're already thinking they might go. Hopefully, most of them will realise, actually, it's not an onerous process. It's actually going to recognise the quality of their work. And it's an endorsement. And we know that the building companies that join the FMB, they do so for credibility. That's the number one reason. They want to be able to actually say, we are a competent professional body. And so they're looking for that verification. So I think a lot of companies will welcome it. There'll be those who will just moan because they'll see it as an extra requirement that they don't want. But I think it will also encourage people who haven't thought about coming into the building industry to think, actually, here's an exciting career. The image of the industry is changing, and has had quite a poor image, a mud and boots image. So hopefully we can open it up and also attract people from other parts of society, because it's still a very male-dominated industry. We need to get more women into the industry.
And I think professionalising the industry would effectively
help.
Make help.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a risk that we go through all this licensing work and businesses are, properly licensed and accredited in that way, and it almost creates a false sense of security for the consumer? That if you've got a license, therefore you're good, and I'm not going to have any problems. And we know human nature, and we know building work, the nature of building work, things do go wrong. The moment you lift the lid or start unpacking a traditional British home, you unpack a load of stuff, don't you?
Absolutely. All those unknowns, and then the builder has to explain to the consumer, and that can cause problems because the consumers will think, oh, actually, are they trying their luck? And not appreciating there are all sorts of nasties under the floorboards.
I know, tell me about it at my own house. I had a horror story on that. But yeah, so is there a risk that we could sort of say licensing is the solution to the consumer detriment issues, to all the consumer protection issues we're trying to achieve here, but actually the reality is for most members of the public, they might still have problems?
Yes, I'm sure there will still be problems. The professions are regulated, but there's always a bad doctor, there's always a bad chartered surveyor, there's always a bad architect. But actually what you're doing is managing the risk. And for the consumer, if things do go wrong, then there is a process for them to tackle the problem. And the industry learns from those problems because it will be recorded, or we understand better the nature of the complaints coming in, and that can be analysed and then provide the training. We'll have all the information that will help the industry develop. And this is going to be really important because at the moment, we don't know what the full picture is. We don't even really know how much. We've got this figure for 14.3 billion, but that's only been found out recently. It could be much bigger, we don't know.
Oh God, I hope not. Your point about data though is particularly well made, and I think, I know this was a real problem. Trustmark obviously had a sort of a data warehouse, but it effectively had to set it up itself, and there was no real support or funding for that. And I know government's now going to, so the DESNES consultation seems to identify
They're talking about centralising the data.
Proper
they
data
recognise
centre.
that, so that needs to be put in place. I think they're talking about 2028, which always worries me because we're coming to the end of the parliamentary session, so general election coming up.
Oh, yeah, so that might not happen. Yes. No, that's a good point. But yeah, so a really strong set of centrally held managed data, which then creates the virtuous circle loop back in. I mean, I used to work for the NHBC, of course, and that was always their model. Inspections and accreditations, effectively are sort of accepting builders into the NHBC for new home building, inspections on site, but then using claims data, and that fed back into then the technical standards that were required, and it was always talked about as a virtual circle.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we need, particularly in the domestic building industry. We need to understand better the nature of the complaints, and that will help provide the training to overcome some of these problems.
And another part, of course, of that model is then an insurance-backed warranty.
Yes.
So let's talk about the redress scheme. So I'm not a builder anymore. I'm now a homeowner or a consumer who's got some work done. For whatever reason, it's not gone right. How does that consumer redress model work in your new vision?
Yes, so I think there does need to be some form of insurance protection, a warranty on the work up to a certain value that will overcome some of that problem. So I think there needs to be a clear process. If the consumer is unhappy with the work, you need to be able to stage those, the level of those complaints. So obviously you'd hope they would talk to the builder, raise it then maybe with the company, then with the scheme operator. Hopefully the scheme operator can find redress. If the consumer is not happy with that, then they take it to the independent licensing authority, who would act as the ombudsman, and actually they would have the final say. And
they would have the actual powers to make financial compensation, would they?
That we would, yes, we'd have to look at that, because we need to make sure we've got sufficient money. But certainly I think that there needs to be an issue to tackle those Phoenix companies. Because at the moment, and it happens at the Federation of Master Builders, and if we can expel a company, that's the ultimate sanction, but that company can still operate in the market, and the consumer, there's not much they can do. So we need a process where we can chase those companies throughout, or have some insurance policy there to...
but when we think about those cowboy builders, as I said, I mean, how many businesses do you have masquerading as FMB members? What's to stop me deciding that I'm going to say that I'm a licensed builder and just get out there and
you could say that, anyway. But actually I think someone using the builder for on their home, that needs to be checked by the mortgage provider. We could actually then say they're not licensed, because we can check on the register to see. So then they can't get the work. So
that's where it's being funded through, borrowing on your mortgage or from a bank.
And that's going to be the game changer, because of the financial institutions are only going to use licensed builders. And there's a register of all those.
Have you been speaking to the lenders about this?
Yeah, we did when we started the campaign, and they were interested in that idea. We need to get them back in to see, now that momentum is growing, although we still haven't got the UK government to say yes to licensing, but you can see in various government departments where DESNES, for example, talking in the consultation, talks about licensed or registered builders for the first time. Peter Bonfield, in his report about flood prevention, talks about the need for licensed builders. The House
call
of Commons.
For evidence around the Single Construction Regulator.
Yes, all of this. That's why there's growing momentum for licensing. So the financial institutions and bodies need to come together, and we need to talk to them about how that would operate.
Do you think it's inevitable, given all this, talk about the Single Construction Regulator and all the mood music that we're hearing at the moment post Grenfell? Do you think this is inevitable? This is going to happen?
It's got to happen, Liz. Otherwise, we're going to just keep talking about this decade after decade. It can't go on. So I think it will. I mean, the political environment might change, and we might get pushed back.
Have you spoken to Andy Burnham about this?
Not yet, but we're definitely going to. We know there's support in the Labour Party, as there is in the Conservatives. Mark Garnier, the Conservative MP, who's tabled private members' bills on this, hugely supportive. It's a cross-party issue, but there seems to be a nervousness both with the Conservative government and with the current Labour government about introducing licensing. People are pushing, I think, government to say, oh, well, it's an extra cost, it's more regulation. But actually, I would say there's going to be less regulation in a way, because you're simplifying the market, because you're removing all that complexity, and actually could create more work, because certainly in domestic building, we know that a third of homeowners are put off having work done. If they knew they could use a licensed builder and that builder could be trusted, they're going to spend more money.
So for licensing for you, is it a consumer protection thing, a thing around building safety? Is it about productivity? Is it about economic growth? Is it about skills and competence? Sort of, what's it really about for you?
For us, it's about all of those things that you've mentioned, but it's about enhancing the reputation of the builder, protecting the good builders from the bad builders, protecting the consumers from the criminals that you talked about earlier, and actually about having a better industry that will improve competitiveness and generate economic growth, which is this country needs this.
Yes, yes. If we had a national licensing scheme along the lines that the FMB is promoting, who polices that? Where is the enforcement coming from?
The enforcement ultimately comes from the licensing authority, because they issue the license through the scheme operators. And this is a license to operate in the building industry. So the company that doesn't have the license, they can't operate. Or if they are, they're operating under the radar. And consumers need to know that actually improvements done to their home with an unlicensed builder may not meet the standards set by the financial lenders. So that is that's where the policing aspect comes into it. And it's keeping that license or taking it away means a company can either operate or not operate. And I think that will keep things in check. Obviously, we want to make sure those companies, if they make mistakes, that we're supporting them. It's only the ones that, repeatedly are negligent in what they're doing should have the license removed.
Yes, so let's talk about that. How does the license get removed?
Yes, so we need to make sure there would be a set of criteria in terms of actually what level of work, if it posed a threat to human safety, for example, or was deemed to be unsafe by the inspector, then it becomes an issue. Sometimes, there could be an honest mistake. All these things need to be assessed individually, but the inspectors will know the level of work in terms of, is that totally unsatisfactory? Doesn't recognise the standards set by the licensing authority, in which case they need to maybe be removed or undergo training and development.
How do firms get removed from FMB membership at the moment? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a standards committee. So a consumer that makes a complaint about a building company, we keep a log of that. If we deem that it's quite a very serious matter, it will go to the standards committee with independent people, not just members, and they will make an assessment about what needs to be done. So it could be the company needs more training. In the worst case, we can expel the company.
And do you do that?
Yes, we do.
How many companies would you expel?
We expel about 20 or so a year.
Okay. And what happens to those businesses, though, at the moment? They can then go on anywhere?
They can work anywhere, yeah. That's why we need licensing.
Right, I get that. So let's imagine a scenario that I am a licensed builder, but the honest truth is my business, we've been struggling a bit. I found it really difficult to get skilled workers. Some of our jobs recently haven't gone really quite to plan, and maybe there's been a sort of a low level of grumbling, you might say, from customers. Possibly a number of complaints have gone, I've sorted some of them myself, but quite a number of complaints might have come up to the FMB or another scheme provider to resolve. And is that the sort of thing then that gets referred up to a licensing authority, or do we just let that do we just deal with that low level?
Well, that's where I think the scheme operator should be helping the company in terms of training and development to solve those problems. And if it's ongoing, if it's not being addressed, then it needs to be escalated.
Probably there's some point, a trigger at
trigger.
which it would get escalated.
Yeah, because they're ignoring all the advice,
Yeah.
not putting the training in place.
Yeah.
Consumers continuously reporting problems.
Okay.
Actually, is that the sort of company you want in the building industry? Probably not, really.
No. But I mean, businesses do go through difficult times, don't they? And
They
it
do.
can be really hard to find good skilled workers.
And you'd want to look at the record. I mean, if the company had been in membership for 5 years, had a really good record, and suddenly there's been a change, that could be because of different workforce, new director coming in.
And of course, a good data system, data warehouse, where you could keep an audit trail on work, actually might help you flag up some of those problems early.
Exactly. So then you can put measures in to help the company.
I know the Trustmark data warehouse is increasingly using AI technologies and new technologies to help them spot patterns quicker.
We haven't touched on that. AI will obviously speed things up.
Yeah. Do you see AI being part of this licensing scheme?
Absolutely. Yeah.
In what ways?
Well, if you've got hundreds of thousands of companies that you need to look at, then you need AI to assess and group them, which otherwise you've got a huge team of people doing that work.
Yeah. And that could help keep the cost down.
And that keeps the cost down. Exactly. So AI will have a key role.
Yeah, data technology seems to be a key part of this puzzle that, in a way, we've not really had the full access to before.
No.
So this might be another tipping point for an initiative like this.
Absolutely, in ways we don't quite understand at the moment, but will really help, I think, and as you say, keep the cost down. We'll have better information, which means we can help those companies who need the extra help.
I'm really excited by this idea, actually, of attracting new entrepreneurial talent into the building industry. The opportunity to set up a very professional business, and we know that the consumer demand is there, pent up demand. Your research shows the same. People who put off getting work done because they are worried about it and they don't know where to go. So we know there's a big pent up market demand for this work. We also know there is a strong demand for retrofit and refurbishment work to make our homes more resilient. We're obviously sitting here on one of the hottest days of the year. Everything is about resilience for overheating as well as insulation against cold and the effects of climate change at that end of the spectrum. So it's like there is a really significant long tail market there that I can't ever see going away.
No.
At the same time, we've got a lot of really interesting trends happening around education for young people, where the value of an academic degree is also being questioned, and people are actually saying, do you know what, if you want to make sure your job is safe for the future from AI, actually get a trade. Everyone's going to need skilled, competent tradespeople to do work, people who can work with their hands. So actually put some of these trends together societally, and of course the demographic drop-off that we're seeing in the building industry as well. I mean, to be honest, if I was 17, 18 years old, I think I would be setting up a building company as a really successful, economically promising opportunity for the future. And to do that in a very professional way as a licensed firm with all the things that you're talking about, I think that's a very exciting opportunity.
I think it's really exciting. It goes away from just thinking about learning a trade and actually understanding that trade as part of a much bigger picture about shaping the environment in which we live. And I don't think that connection is made at school sometimes.
No.
That actually you can be part of creating a better environment, a better living space, and creating your own company. What could be better than being entrepreneurial, taking responsibility, shaping something with your own hard work. And we know that if you work hard in the building industry, the results are very, very good. Particularly if you've got strong communication skills in the building industry, you're going to do well because you're going to build up that trust.
Completely agree. And I mean, there's not a young person I know who hasn't got a side hustle on the go.
Yeah.
You know, this is a very entrepreneurial generation.
Yeah, much more so than ours. And that is the future for Britain, I think, actually. And we need to be selling this by saying a career in the construction industry, yes, you can be a builder, you can be a surveyor, but why not set up your own business? Because you can then shape what you want to do, if it's on the design, retrofit, house building, placemaking, planning. I mean, it's so many parts which we're going to need regardless of AI. We're still going to need a lot of very skilled people in the construction sector. And hopefully that attracts people who have not thought about construction as a career. And we get people from all parts of society. It needs to be much more diverse, our industry.
Yes, it does.
And I think the AI technology will help take some of the, a lot of the hard work away, physical hard work, and make it more interesting.
So part of the competence then for a licensed builder is business competence, isn't it?
Yes. And that's one of the problems we do find at the Federation of Master Builders. Someone has learnt their trade, they're absolutely superb at it, but then running a business can be a big challenge. And that's when some of them get into trouble, purely because they don't know what to do, which is why they look to the F&B in terms of helping them run a business. And it can be very lonely if you, on your own with your business, trying to cover all the functions, all the responsibilities. If you're employing someone, that comes with onerous responsibility sometimes. So support is needed. But you're right, it's for a young person, it's about, yes, you need to learn the trade, but then use that to understand how to run a business.
And obviously communication skills.
That's where critical, and that's where a lot of building industries fall down, not understanding the importance of communication. And those that do very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I like doing the work, but I'd rather not talk to the customer. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's what happens. And, it's a constant process of saying, talking to your customer is fundamental, because that will give you more leads in the future. So
how do we get that? How do we get that growth happening of that sort of professional, entrepreneurial, highly skilled, business savvy, great communicating builders, master builders? How do we get that new generation, Brian?
That's about changing the image of the building industry. That's about getting a licensing model in place to make sure actually our industry is properly regulated, and that will attract people who will give construction a second thought, thinking, yes, that's for me. They will understand that actually this is a good industry that offers great opportunities, and it's not just about bricklaying, it's about creating the society in which we want to live.
Have you spoken at all to Federation of Small Businesses and other sort of business organisations that are involved in generating new sort of economic growth through SMEs? Do you work with groups like that?
We do cut across, and there's the Construction Leadership Council, which brings everyone together in the construction sector. We have other arrangements with other organisations such as the FSB or the consumer organisations as well. We'll talk to anyone that will actually improve our industry and society. That's where our commitment comes from.
So how do others get involved in the Licence to Build campaign?
Yes, so we need more people to talk about the licensing campaign. On our website, there's information and that interactive model about looking at your constituency, about the scale of the problem in your area. You can write to your MP, because we want more MPs to talk about this in Parliament, but using social media, highlighting the importance of having licensed builders and naming and shaming those criminals that come into our industry.
And celebrating the good ones.
And celebrating the great work that builders do. And that's something we do at the F&B through our Master Builder Awards. Most builders are doing a fantastic job. And it's for them that we're trying to be champions in terms of saying, you need to be recognised and appreciated for the work that you do. And we need to get rid of the criminals from our industry.
Yeah, and it's celebrating good business people. Back to our conversation about business skills.
Absolutely. We should shout louder as an industry about the great work, the everyday work. sometimes there's a tendency to focus on the big, exciting infrastructure projects, which we do need. But why don't we shout about the great work we're doing in terms of a small housing development or houses that have been renovated?
And the good money to be made.
And the good money, and also the opportunities for young people. When we've got nearly a million young people not in educational training.
I know, which is absolutely
And we need
insane.
those people in construction, but we need to make sure there's a pathway for them to do.
Yes, absolutely right. Let's imagine it's now, I don't know, 2032, 33, 35. You know, we have had a licensing scheme in the and it's a United Kingdom wide. It's not just devolved governments. It's a whole UK scheme. Yeah. So tell me, what does it look like? How is it different?
Well, Liz, I think the great thing is changing the image of the industry. People know actually construction offers a rewarding career. We've seen that the number of complaints from consumers has gone down. We understand better the nature of the complaints. We're seeing that actually there's a defined competence levels in the building industry. We're seeing people coming into the industry and not wanting to leave. You know, compared to the 1/3 that were going to leave, that's now dropped. So we're seeing that buy-in from the elderly people in the construction industry as well as the young people. And we're seeing actually young people want to come into construction. It's positive. I'm sure there'll still be a lot to learn from this, but compared to where we've been, we're seeing huge improvements.
And we know that a large proportion of our tradespeople and our businesses in the RMI sector in the UK don't belong to any sort of trade body or group. Does that change then? Because, I mean, everyone would effectively become part of a group of some sort?
Yeah, so everyone now is belonging to a scheme operator. So they're improving their learning, their communication, and driving up standards. And that validation that which we didn't have before now exists. But what we're learning, collecting all that data, is actually ways to improve the productivity of the building industry, which we didn't have before.
So all of those things should be measurable then?
We
should be able to have the numbers to prove that a scheme that it has actually worked.
It works, and we can learn from where it's not working, because we'll have the data.
Excellent. Well, what can I say? Good luck.
Thank you, Liz.
It does feel like there's a particular sweet spot at the moment, isn't there? So many different things coming together. Right now seems a very different sort of environment from when we've talked about this, you know, probably even 20 years ago, thinking about some of these ideas. It's
a complete turnaround from where we were. I've been here quite a long time, and I remember under the coalition government, David Cameron's government, where they were talking about deregulating, removing building regulations. I mean, I had a phone call to say, could you identify any building regs that we could get rid of? What a change around, and of course it was Grenville that changed that. And a recognition that things have to be done differently. And I think with the introduction of the Building Safety Act, and the way it's trickling down, people now know their responsibilities as a principal contractor, principal designer, that the whole landscape is changing. There's still work to be done, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. There are recommendations in various reports about competence licensing. We just need to pull the threads together to actually join it up. And that's where hopefully politicians from across the spectrum will unite on this, because this is about creating a better industry, a safer industry, both for builders and consumers. But we just need that final push, and that's what we are doing at the FMB.